6,000 years before the pyramids rose from the sand, a group of miners stood on the shore of a cold northern lake, and they were about to do something that would leave archaeologists baffled for centuries. They cut into solid rock. They pulled out chunks of pure, gleaming copper. And then, according to the physical evidence still sitting in the ground today, they simply stopped. Millions of pounds of copper, gone. No forges, no trade records, no bodies, just silence, and thousands of empty pits scattered across an island in Lake Superior like open wounds in the earth. For over a century, historians and archaeologists have asked the same haunting question. Where did all that copper go? And the Ojibwe, the people who have called this land home for generations, have always known something the history books left out. Welcome back to the channel. If you love uncovering the mysteries buried in America's forgotten past, hit subscribe now, because this is one of the strangest stories you will ever hear about the land you thought you knew. Let's go back further. Around 3000 BCE, thousands of years before European ships ever touched this continent, ancient miners worked the shores of Lake Superior with a level of skill that seems almost impossible for the era. They used fire to heat the rock, then douse it with cold water, cracking it apart. Then they pounded out the copper with stone hammers, some weighing over 30 pounds, swung by hand, over and over, for generations. This wasn't a one-time discovery. This was an industry. Archaeologists have documented over 5,000 ancient mining pits across our Royal and the Quinault Peninsula alone. And here's a detail that should stop you in your tracks. Some of these mines produced copper so pure it required almost no smelting at all, a geological rarity found in very few places on Earth. So who were these miners? For a long time, 19th century explorers refused to believe native peoples were capable of this kind of large-scale extraction. They invented theories about lost civilizations, wandering Phoenicians, even Vikings, anyone but the indigenous nations who actually lived there. It took decades and a mountain of archaeological evidence to finally credit the ancestors of the Ojibwe and related Anishinaabe peoples with what is now recognized as one of the oldest metalworking traditions in the Americas. But here's where the story gets even stranger. Unlike almost every other ancient copper-producing culture in the world, there is very little evidence that these early Great Lakes miners melted the copper down into tools using high-heat smelting the way societies in the Middle East or Mesoamerica did. Instead, they cold-hammered it, shaping it directly into knives, spear points, fish hooks, and ornamental pieces. And artifacts made from this exact copper, chemically traced back to the Great Lakes through isotopic analysis, have been found as far away as the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic seaboard. Let that sink in. Thousands of years before roads, before horses, before writing systems in North America, a trade network stretched across nearly the entire continent, carrying copper from this one remote region to peoples who had never seen the lake it came from. Now here's the part that turns this from an archaeological curiosity into a genuine mystery. After thousands of years of continuous mining, the activity appears to drop off sharply. Not everywhere, and not all at once, but significantly around 1200 to 1000 BCE, based on radiocarbon dating from tool remnants and hearths found at these sites. Why would a society abandon a resource that valuable? Historians have proposed a few competing theories, and none of them agree completely. Some suggest climate shifts disrupted the trade routes that made moving heavy copper worthwhile. Others point to social or spiritual changes, arguing the copper's role shifted from practical tool-making toward ceremonial and sacred use, which required far less material. And this is where oral tradition enters a story usually left only to stone and soil. For the Ojibwe, Copper was never just metal. It was considered a gift from the spirit world, tied to Misipeshu, a powerful underwater spirit believed to guard the lake and its treasures. Taking copper wasn't simply mining. It was an act requiring respect, ritual, and permission. Some accounts describe offerings left at mining sites, an exchange rather than an extraction. This isn't a fringe theory tacked onto the archaeology. It's a parallel record, carried through generations by people who were there, while European settlers were still centuries away from setting foot on this continent. And it forces a question worth sitting with. What if the copper didn't disappear because the people forgot how to mine it? What if it disappeared because the culture's relationship with the land itself changed? Fast forward to the 1840s, and this ancient mystery collides head-on with the modern world. American geologists surveying Michigan's Upper Peninsula stumbled onto those same ancient pits, now overgrown with trees hundreds of years old, and they were stunned. Some of the pits contained stone hammers still lying exactly where they'd been dropped thousands of years earlier. One especially famous discovery involved a mass of copper estimated at several tons, found partially excavated, propped up on wooden supports, as if the ancient miners had simply walked away mid-task and never returned. This discovery triggered one of America's first major mining booms, decades before the California gold rush captured the nation's imagination. Companies rushed into the Quinault Peninsula, and this new industrial mining, layered directly on top of ancient indigenous sites, would go on to produce more than 11 billion pounds of copper. But almost none of the credit, and almost none of the profit, went to the descendants of the people who first proved this copper even existed. The Ojibwe were pushed off ancestral land through a series of treaties in the mid-1800s, treaties signed under pressure as mining companies moved in behind them. The people who held 6,000 years of accumulated knowledge about this land were displaced by the very discovery their ancestors made possible. If this story is hitting you the way it hit me when I first researched it, do me a favor and drop a like. It genuinely helps this channel keep telling stories like this one. So what really happened to the ancient miners and their copper? The honest answer is that no single theory fully explains it, and any documentary claiming certainty is not being straight with you. What we do know is laid, and it's remarkable on its own. We know indigenous peoples in the Great Lakes region ran a sophisticated mining and trade operation thousands of years before Europe's Bronze Age tools reached comparable regions. We know that copper traveled farther than almost any other prehistoric trade good found in North America. We know European surveyors found evidence of a mining culture so advanced that early scientists refused to believe native peoples were responsible, an assumption rooted more in bias than in evidence. And we know that when the profit potential of that copper became clear, the descendants of its original discoverers were displaced from the land that held their history. The pits are still there today, quiet, moss-covered, easy to walk past without a second glance. But each one represents a decision made by real people, thousands of years ago, to work this specific rock in this specific place, using techniques that took a lifetime to master. The Ojibwe never lost the story of that copper. History simply stopped listening for a while. If you want more forgotten stories like this one, stories where indigenous history and hidden American mysteries collide, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what we uncover next.